Hi everybody, welcome to another lecture series with the Greene County Historical Society. My name is Phil, and I represent an archaeology chapter for Monmouth chapter number 3. And with Greene County and Matt's Historical Society, they allow us to come down here and to do a lecture series with them about once a month. Now tonight we have Ben, the Demchak, right? The Demchak, sorry about that, and explain what you do and what you're talking about tonight.
I'm an archaeologist, and I'm the cultural resources team lead with SWCA Environmental Consultants. So we do a lot of archaeology within cultural resource management related to Section 106. I went to school. I excavated my first site here in Greene County, so it's good to come back to the motherland, archaeologically speaking, for me. And I was also a student of Dr. Matt. Way back when, 2005, 2006, I do believe, was when my middle school was. So, yeah, it's really great when I got the opportunity to come out and talk to everyone and give a presentation. I was really excited about it, looking forward to it. This is a research project that I started working on in the past and then kind of let it rest a little bit. But there's still a lot of questions that I'm interested in pursuing, so it's good to kind of dust the old slides off and open this book back up and take a look at some of this research I did. So, like I said, looking forward to chatting with you and talking about some of the research I did. So, my presentation is called Numbers Behind the Notion, the Relationship Between Cemeteries in Washington County, Ohio, and the Waters of the United States. Waters of the United States are commonly referred to as WOAs. So, in academia, the quest to always study the new or unknown sometimes overshadows important data waiting for analysis within commonly held notions. And this is what this presentation attempts to do, is put some numbers behind the notion. So, the notion of Ohio Valley cemetery placement avoiding water sources does not necessarily state anything new to the archaeologists who practice their craft here in the Ohio Valley. This presentation attempts to put the numbers behind the notion regarding how cemeteries are generally not located in proximity to regulated features such as WOAs, Waters of the United States. I'll call them WOAs from here on out. By examining the relationship between Ohio Genealogical Society cemeteries in Washington County, Ohio, and the WOAs features that reside there. When you think about WOAs, think of waterways. The emergent patterns not only reveal how cemeteries are generally not found in proximity to WOAs features, but where the sweet spot of OGS cemetery placement is from WOAs in Washington County. Since the remaining undocumented cemeteries in Washington County and throughout eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania likely follow similar patterns, this research demonstrates how these cultural resources are some of the most threatened under the United States Army Corps of Engineers interpretation of Section 106. Now, my presentation does not condemn or argue whose interpretation of Section 106 is correct. It simply examines how USC's interpretation of Section 106 opens the doorway for adverse effects on these forgotten cemeteries. The research conducted in this presentation represents a fusion of geographic interface system, GIS data, and research methods commonly found in the field of CRM, Cultural Resource Management. In the field of CRM, archaeologists' primary objective deals with preserving and mitigating cultural resources, possessing the ability to contribute information to the pre-contact historic record. The field of CRM primarily owes its mainstay to Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, particularly the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation's Protection of Historic Properties. The Protection of Historic Properties regulations provide the framework for a consultation pursuant to Section 106. Because of these consultations, many cultural resources remain intact and documented. Under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, federal agencies are required to consider the potential effects of proposed undertakings on historic properties. An undertaking includes any project carried out by a federal agency with federal financial assistance and or those requiring a federal permit, license, or approval. If a project is determined to be an undertaking and has potential to impact historic properties, consultation under section 106 is required.
I think I'm already on.
We got that. So, typically in the Ohio Valley region, these projects include, but are not limited to, utility lines, well pads, cell phone towers, even lately solar facilities, data centers, and roadway construction. Out of these projects, linear natural gas lines are among those most prevalent in the Ohio Valley. Figure 1.1 and 1.2 are examples of the project. Right there are examples of a project that I was involved with, the Utopia Pipeline project across the state of Ohio. The figure 1.1, which is the one all the way to the right, shows what a typical pipeline project looks like after post-construction. Figure 1.2 is the Utopia Pipeline project shown 2017 Google Earth imagery, just south of Wooster, Ohio, that we could see where it is after it's been put in. Large portions of natural gas development require authorization from the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Since the copious number of linear projects concentrate the regulated waterways of the United States, the WOTUS. Authorization under a nationwide or other general permit issued by the USACE constitutes a federal undertaking and requires compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act. However, the USACE developed and follows its own version of Section 106 regulation, generally referred to as Appendix C, a document which the ACHP has never approved and regards as contradictory to their regulations. One of the main contradictions between the regulations relating to how USACE treats each WOTUS crossing as a single and complete project or undertaking, effectively separating each crossing from the remainder of the linear project's construction. Therefore, according to the USACE, the remainder of a project area outside of the WOTUS finds itself not subject to Section 106 consultation. This directly contradicts ACHP's regulations that state the entire area of potential effect should be included in the Section 106 review. You know, basically, long story short is you're only focusing the archaeological survey around the waterways and all the area in between the waterways under that interpretation or not on the survey. So tensions arise from these differences in interpretations and sometimes bubble over, becoming visible in the public eye, as seen with issues surrounding the Dakota Access Pipeline. Cemeteries find themselves more readily susceptible to destruction under the USC's interpretation because they're usually rooted in cultural practices that aren't necessarily rely on the presence of water. They lay in the realm of cultural traditions. Furthermore, cemeteries tend to be far from water because hydrological processes destroy rather than preserve them. Americans establish burial grounds at cemeteries with an eye towards permanency. Next slide, please. Mary, within the Washington County, Ohio, Marion's old cemetery, the Harm Cemetery, exhibits what happens when caution is not used. Cemeteries are placed near WOTUSes. You can see Muscatine River, this has been a floodplain area, especially large ones that are prone to flooding. In this case, the closest WOTUS is the Muscatine River, just east, and it is in the background of the As the historic marker shows, water played an important role in destroying the cemetery's above-ground features. The next slide right here, figure 1.5, shows Farmer Cemetery's relationship to the Muscatine River as seen by D.G. Lakes, 1875. See, who said that? If an eye towards permanency remains true today, then why does the USC's interpretation of Section 106 not find itself with more of a grassroots condemnation as seen with the Dakota Access Pipeline? The answer likely stems from the public having no idea that these issues exist, rather than not caring about them. This leaves a lack of public pressure towards these rules and regulations. Regardless of the eye towards permanency placed on cemeteries, time makes a formidable opponent, as the cemetery in the next slide shows. The cemetery